Hi, everybody. My name is Heather Dawson. I'm at U of M-Flint. I am a professor of biology, and I'm also the executive director of the Office of Research and Economic Development. So welcome. This is the U of M-Flint, U of M-Dearborn, or turn that if you prefer, collaborative research and networking series, right? So this is the kickoff event. We'll have some chancellor's remarks today. But this is event 1 of 4, and we'll have somebody put in the chat the link to register for the other events if you haven't yet already. I just want to say first off, thanks to the organizers of this event. So from U of M Dearborn Office of Research, we have Armin Zakarian, Vesela Vasilieva Clark, and Rebecca Wren, and Ken Sylvester from U of M Flint's Office of Research, Nick Looney, and thank you for your technical support, excuse me. So we're going to start out the event with the Chancellor's remarks from both U of M Flint, of course, and U of M Dearborn. This is really exciting, right? In my 12 years at U of M Flint, I don't remember anything like this happening. So they're going to tell you their vision for the event and the collaborations that are sure that this event is sure to produce. Then we'll do the lightning talks, 5 minutes per speaker. We have 7 speakers overall from U of M Flint to U of M Dearborn. And then we'll enter breakout rooms, right? Where we'll actually get to talk with the lightning talk speakers, or maybe just collaborate with another individual from the other university, right? Faculty can get to know one another there. We also have the contact cards that were sent to you earlier. So if you don't get a chance to ask a question or reach out during the breakout room session, you can always do so because you'll have that information. So, and then of course, right, the chancellors were nice enough to provide funding that we can all compete for in terms of research proposals, where we find somebody at the other university and collaborate on a research proposal and compete for that funding. So we're really, really happy to have that. So there's a lot of exciting opportunity here. Without further ado, I think now I'll just invite the chancellors to speak. So I'm going to introduce the U of M Flint chancellor because I'm biased. First, Chancellor Debba Dutta, if you don't mind providing your remarks for us right now.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you. And welcome everyone. It is it's really a wonderful event. As Heather said, possibly the first time between these two institutions. So I welcome everyone from U of M Flint who has joined us, as well as everyone, faculty, administrators, and my colleague, Domenico Grasso, the Chancellor of U of M Dearborn. So welcome everyone. As was mentioned, the idea here is to establish new collaborations or strengthen existing collaborations if you have that going between the two campuses. I feel that through these events, we will be able to jointly between the two campuses, the faculty and students and other researchers, we will be able to compete for external grants in the areas where there are external grants available. The funding agencies more and more are looking for or looking to fund collaborations. Increasingly, you will see that single investigator grants are reducing. So not only multi-investigator grants, but multi-institution grants, because you are able to bring in faculty and students and researchers from different institutions who come with like different boundary conditions, the students and so forth. So this will make our two campuses, when they compete for NSF, NIH, or any other grants, it will be more competitive. I also want to mention this, that in areas where we do not have external funding, as much as in science, STEM, and other fields, it is my hope and intention that U of M-Flint will try to do internal funding for the ones that we wish to go forward with. Of course, there are foundations like the Mellon Foundation, Mott Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation. We will hope that those funds or those efforts will also be made. But I, for one, would like to see that in areas we don't have external funding, that the University of Michigan Flint makes every effort to continue that work going forward. So I'm very excited. I think we will hear excellent lightning talks, and after that, the breakout rooms will establish the collaborations. And Heather already mentioned, or she will, the timeline, the window in which the proposals have to be submitted. So, so thank you very much for being a part of this inaugural event. I think good things will come out of this. Let's try to do everything we can to further strengthen the collaborations between our two campuses. And this, I will also say, there are opportunities that internally at U of M, through the Office of Vice President for Research, when they put out these calls, I think Flint and Dearborn should combine and think of submitting proposals, including Ann Arbor, of course, but wherever it is appropriate, because we are serving different regions. And if we can combine and submit proposals, it'll be more competitive. So thank you, and back to Heather.
Thank you, Chancellor Dutta. Appreciate that. Now I'm going to introduce the Chancellor for U of M Dearborn, Chancellor Domenico Grasso. Chancellor.
Heather, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to echo everything that Chancellor Dutta just said. I agree fully with everything that he articulated. He did a very nice job there. Research, of course, research and scholarship are very important to university life. It helps us recruit, retain, develop, support, and engage the top scholars in the field so they can come and share their knowledge with our wonderful students as outstanding teachers. Not only does it help create knowledge, but it helps create connections. And these connections go within our campus and across our campus and outside. And now hopefully we'll have an opportunity to create strong connections with our Flint colleagues, as well as connections with our students. U of M Dearborn and U of M Flint are very similar, but we're complementary. We have similar goals and perspectives, but different strengths. This gives us an opportunity to really combine these strengths on important topics of the day. At Dearborn, we're fashioning ourselves as a practice-based institution where our scholarship and research are directed towards problems in society right now. We're not as focused, although many of our faculty still do, very basic research with no clear connection right at this moment to societal problems, but most of our work is directed towards societal problems. I think that this also characterizes much of what I know about Flint, which makes us well adapted to one another. Along with Chancellor Dutta, I am delighted to be able to launch this collaborative research series and grants project across campus, trying to increase our interdisciplinary collaborations. It will enhance the already high research potential of our talented faculty members and make us competitive, as Chancellor Dutta said, for external funding, and as well as potentially competitive funding within the larger U of M family. So I am very happy to be here. I'm very happy, along with my colleague, to launch this, and I wish you all the best of luck, and let us know what else we can do to help.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we heard from our chancellors. So now we're going to hear from the lightning talk presenters. If we have the info ready link available, to put that in the chat for so people can look over what those funding guidelines might be, we'll do that for you. So one thing, it's, they're giving their elevator pitch about their research, right? But it's quick, and we're moving through speakers, and so we won't have time for questions for the lightning talk presenters. But we urge you to sort of use those contact cards, reach out to them, or maybe you'll be put in a breakout room with them after we finish the lightning talks themselves. So this event is the Urban Arts and Culture and Sustainability event. So that's what we're going to hear. I'm certainly proud to see some of my colleagues in these lightning talk presenters, and I'm excited to see what's going to come out of the U of M-Dearborn folks as well. Absolutely. So first off, I'm going to introduce Andy Deck. He's our first lightning speaker. He's an assistant professor of art, and he's from the University of Michigan, Flint. And Andy, it's all yours.
Okay, so all that is accurate, and I'm going to jump right into showing you some of the imagery from work that I've done over the years. I actually studied art and painting and computer programming as an artist at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor years ago. And at that time, collaboration was not really a major focus in my work, but over the years, I became known as a net artist, meaning that I was distributing my art through the internet. And that led me to encounter people who were working or had similar interests across the world. And so the internet became my entryway into a more collaborative approach to art and design. And so the institution that I co-founded with some friends from Europe is Transnational Temps, and I'm going to focus my attention on that today because this is a lightning talk session that is about my sustainability related work. And so what we have done together over the years is to produce workshops and to have exhibitions together. And it's been, I would say, tactical media. So that's kind of the theme of my talk today is how we have used the internet and opportunities available to us to address issues of climate change and resource depletion and problems with biodiversity and so forth. So one of the things that I think of when I think of tactical media and the things that we've done together as Transnational Temps is that we've tried all kinds of different things. And this is because I think we're looking for conversion experiences for people to share some of our interests or some of our urgency about climate change or about trying to preserve habitats for different species and so forth. So I've tried to use cartooning and things that are cute to try to bridge that divide with people whose perspectives might not be similar to my own. And I've worked in print. I've distributed these things through the internet. And I've also worked through exhibition formats. So we came together to curate an exhibition in New York about the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico while it was going on. We were told by the news that it was going to be going on for another 90 days or something like that. And so we said, we can do an exhibition in 90 days. And so we got people to submit their work and we put together this exhibition while it was still happening. In other cases, we've made software. And so the software is sometimes satirical in nature. This is something that I call Robotros, or it's based on Bob Ross, but it's turning him into a robot and creating scenarios where some of the imagery that it can be produced is dystopian. We've created online software to help people communicate in chat spaces that are not blank, but rather that have a certain focus, like the environment. So people can choose to situate themselves in a melting glacier and communicate and perhaps share some of their concerns about that publicly. So, there's many different ways that we can use new media to explore things that haven't been done yet. And so we've worked in public settings like shopping centers. We've had a workshop with children. We've made websites, mobile apps, all kinds of different things in order to try to explore dynamics related to the environment and ecology And so, collectively, we've been at the forefront of the emergence of art in this area of eco-media. And I look forward to, hearing from other potential collaborators and colleagues at Dearborn and even in Flint in order to see, what kinds of ways we might be able to, share a vision and raise some funding.
Thank you, Andy. That was great. Definitely wildlife focused. I'm very excited about that. Okay, our next speaker is Paul Dross. He's a professor of sociology and the director of the Master of Science in Criminology and Criminal Justice at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. Paul?
Hi, thank you. Oh, I have to go back here. Hold on a second. So I'm here to talk to you about a very exciting collaborative project that I'm involved with in the city of Detroit. And when I present on this project, I like to always start with a question, which is, what do you think of when you think about alleys, when you think about urban alleyways? And I'm imagining that if you're anything like me, your mind conjures up an image, maybe something like this, which is a cartoon image of an alley as a kind of a dark and forbidding place. And of course, many people tend to think of alleys in this way. And as noted by Gresham Smith, alleys often get a bad rap in terms of their relationship or their association with things, such as crime and contamination and pollution. But if you go to the city of Detroit, I mean, this is what a lot of actual present day alleys look like in the city of Detroit. You see that there is evidence, obviously, of abandonment, reflective of the condition of the city, but you also see these are incredibly green and lush environments. And many of you may not imagine an alley to look something like this, but this is an example of what an alley can look like after it's been activated, after people have spent time trying to think about the ways in which the alley can be repurposed to meet the needs of the present day community. So that brings us to this project that I'm talking about here today, which is the Alley Activation Project. I want to introduce you to Mr. Corey Beatty, who's there, standing there in my image. Corey is a lifelong resident of the city of Detroit, who I met in 2019, I think, at a community meeting in Detroit, which was focused on the Joe Louis Greenway project. And Corey started talking to me about his own story and how he started working in alleys. He was a cable guy installing cable lines and had to go through a lot of different overgrown alleys in the city of Detroit. And he became obsessed with trying to turn these alleys into places that were not negative deficits in communities, but assets for communities. And this led to the idea of the Alley Activation Project, which Corey describes as a framework for activating alleys and connecting residents with resources from around the city of Detroit. So in working with Corey, we focused on the process of alley activation, which has a number of different levels to it. There's an engagement aspect of the process. There is a research component of the process where we look at various aspects of the work that alleys do and the things that happen in alleys. There's a visualization component of the process where we work with community members to envision what alleys might look like using virtual reality technology, for example, as well as other tools. And there's an implementation focus on the project, which involves trying to actually transform alleys into usable social spaces. So another way that we've thought about this process of alley activation is as a form of urban acupuncture, in which particular sort of hyper-local sites of the city are being stimulated and activated in order to produce larger aggregate results in urban neighborhoods and even potentially citywide. So some of the goals of the Alley Activation Project include economic goals in terms of entrepreneurial activity, stimulation of local microeconomies, educational goals in terms of some of the environments and ecologies and environmental issues that are evident in alleys, ecological and sustainability goals having to do with the potential of alleys to absorb stormwater, to produce a cooling effect, and to provide other types of sources of biodiversity and access to nature, which connects to the last set of goals, which are recreational and restorative goals, thinking about how alleys can actually provide a very, very localized resource for people to be able to engage in outdoor activity and also to derive some of the benefits, psychological and social, of exposure to nature. So to conclude, what alley activation for us is really come to represent is a process of co-creation. We often say that an alley is an activated alley is an activated community. And so we welcome any partners, anyone who wants to simply come and participate in an event or come hang out in an alley, and we will attempt to find a solution that is right up your alley. Thank you. And these are some of my partners at U of M Dearborn and beyond working on the alley activation project.
That was very cool. And yeah, nice pun intended. I love that. I know there's some U of M Flint folks that actually would work really well with you potentially. I think there's some decent collaborations just based on the art folks that I know, for example. Okay, our next speaker I'm going to introduce is Jacob Litterman. He is an associate professor of urban sociology at the University of Michigan Flint. Jacob.
Hey everyone. Sorry, I'm just seeing suddenly a Zoom update, not now. It's nice to be here. It's actually really nice to see some folks that I already know, like Paul, who I haven't seen in a while, and already can kind of see some overlap between the work that we're presenting today. I'm Jacob Litterman. I'm in sociology. I'm going to talk a little bit about some prior work I've done, and I'm just starting a new project in Detroit. So hopefully there'll be some nice overlap, particularly with the folks in Dearborn. So broadly, I've been interested in kind of urban best practice. So sort of how urban paradigms travel, how expert knowledge is diffused, and its relationship to urban governance. My last project was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, pretty far away. And I'm trying to bring some of this work closer to home in a new project, which I'll tell you a little bit about. So there's all sorts of ways that social scientists have thought about these kinds of questions. I won't go into them here, but the basic idea is kind of thinking about how cities select these very prominent influential paradigms. So maybe some of you have heard of this term, the creative city, or, sustainability is obviously quite fashionable in expert narratives, expert knowledge diffusion across cities today, things like the smart city. So some of my questions here are, how do technical programs, so efforts to implement sustainability projects, for example, how do they reflect certain kinds of ideological choices? So we might think about implementing like a bus rapid transit, which on the one hand feels quite technical, but we also might ask ourselves, how are policymakers deciding where to put that particular infrastructure? And how does that reflect certain patterns or understandings of the city? So who influences whom? Where do policy ideas come from? Are some of the questions I'm interested in. I'm starting, or have started, a new project in Detroit, and I'm sort of curious in nationally and locally how this term placemaking has become so prominent in urban planning discourses across the country and really around the world. I'm looking particularly historically at the downtown of Detroit, but also sort of how this is then, how this paradigm is implemented in a neighborhood with a lot of vacancy called North Corktown, which is receiving a lot of investment, now and over the last few years. It's quite close to where Ford is building its kind of EV hub. So I'm interested in how and why placemaking paradigms have become dominant in Detroit and across the country. The way that this particular urban planning expertise enables new urban coalitions. So how does this bring together kind of nonprofit housing developers, for-profit housing developers, city officials, philanthropies, think tanks? And part of the argument that I hope to make in this project is that part of the allure of this paradigm is its ability to kind of be an umbrella for many of these different coalitional actors. And then finally, some, I guess, ethical or normative questions. Is placemaking equitable? some people might say it's just a legitimation strategy of the powerful. And finally, is it what sociologists might call an organizational hinge, a way in which different actors in the field of urban and community development are able to come together under a shared understanding of the city? And I'll just say the photos here are of Campus Martius, which is one of the most prominent placemaking endeavors really in the country, put together by a well-known nonprofit called the Project for Public Spaces, which is touted across the world as a success in urban planning. And North Corktown is also a fairly visible example of this in the city of Detroit. So finally, I guess in Detroit, I'm looking at the role of experts and nonprofits, as well as think tanks. How do these institutional actors or elite actors kind of diffuse their knowledge of the city and their knowledge of these paradigms? Why are they influential for city officials, and how are they influential for city officials? And also I'm interested in extrospective city officials. So city officials who are actively looking at outside paradigms and are actively looking to be influenced by best practices around the world. I will leave it at that. Thanks so much. I look forward to talking with some of you more.
Thank you, Jacob. I know that there's a lot of sociologists, artists, urban planners, not only as our lightning talk speakers, but also here in the audience listening, right? That hopefully breakout rooms, it sounds like there'll be some good collaborative opportunities there. Okay, I wanted to introduce now Fred Fang. He's an assistant professor in industrial and manufacturing systems engineering at the University of Michigan Dearborn. Fred?
All right, thank you for the introduction. Let me share my screen. So this is the research website of my research group, and also I put the link in the chat room if you want to check it later. It's fangroup.org. So here I'm going to just briefly talk about some of the research work we have been doing in the past few years. So in a nutshell, our research lab focused on advancing the safety of sustainable, active, and equitable modes of transportation, such as cycling and walking, through the development of data-driven insights, strategies and tactics, and technologies. So generally speaking, we're interested in anything that's going to make our roads safer for people walking or riding a bicycle. So here in this picture shows one of the projects we did earlier. We built this research bicycle that have these cameras and a LiDAR, which typically seen on autonomous vehicles. So we can record the 3D point cloud of the riding environment and use that to analyze some of the safety issues. For example, here it shows when a car was passing the cyclist from behind, we have all the 3D point cloud information for us to reconstruct the trajectory of the car to analyze the safety implications. And in a few other projects, we also launched a what we call a naturalistic cycling study. So we built this fleet of electric bicycles with cameras and GPS and other sensors. And then we give the bike to the ordinary people to ride for a few weeks. And then we analyze the data afterwards. And then we can look at the cameras and also GPS to look at what are sometimes we call the safety critical events, to analyze how the drivers and cyclists interact on the road. And also we can use a GPS information to get this kind of a heat map. So this is one of the heat map that we generated using the GPS data. So the brighter the color basically means that road is more popular for the cyclist. And this is, as you can see here, from this we can know that what are the people's preference and choice of the riding routes, and how that can be correlated with the road infrastructure design, for example, bike lane versus non-bike lane. And in some other project, we also built this virtual reality cycling simulator. It's on a stationary bicycle, and the rider can just wear this VR goggle, and then they can ride in this virtual environment where we can design and replicate a lot of different kind of encounters between drivers and cyclists. And we can use that for studying, for example, people's preferences and the safety implications of different roadway infrastructure designs. And similarly, we can collect this kind of data on cars as well. So this is a study we did where we have cameras and other sensors on vehicles, and we analyze how drivers and the cyclists interact with each other, but from the driver's perspective. As you can see here, from the front view, we can actually see the rider was riding in his bike lane, and then we have very detailed, continuous quantitative information of the driving behavior. And based on that, we can analyze things like how close the drivers are passing cyclists, depending on the different roadway designs. For example, we found in one of our previous work, we found the passing distance, or how much the driver moves over when passing cyclists, also related to the lane marking types, as well as the traffic conditions. So this is kind of work that we do in our lab. And if you're interested, we have more on our website. We have more information on the research and the facility tab. If you want to reach out to me, you can find my contact information as well. And so far, our work primarily focused on the safety aspect of it, but I would love to work in collaboration with some of my colleagues, or to work on some other aspect. For example, the health and equity aspect of it, and how the safety issue is related to things like urban planning, how we decide to build our cities, and the land use. So that's all I have, and I'd love to talk more during the breakout sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. And I know that one of the lightning speakers, Greg Grabarczyk at the end, I know he's really excited about this kind of work, the safety of different transportation modes, especially cycling. So if you haven't met him yet, and I hope we put you guys in the same breakout room,
Yes,
if not,
please.
you guys should get together, look at those contact cards and make sure, hopefully we put you together so you can talk about all of this at the end. Thank you very much. I want to introduce now Rebecca Tonietto. She is an assistant professor of biology at the University of Michigan-Flint. Rebecca.
Thank you. Give me 1 second to share only. There we go. All right. So hi, my name is Rebecca Tonietto. I am an assistant professor of biology in the Department of Natural Sciences at the University of Michigan-Flint. And the image you see here is kind of the habitat in which I spend a lot of my time. I think I would describe myself, depending on what room I'm in, I'm a community ecologist. I use community ecological assessment tools. I'm especially focused on habitat restoration and plant conservation and the conservation of pollinators, with another specific focus on native bees. So I spend a lot of time watching flowers and counting insects and pinning things and looking underneath a microscope. But the places in which I do this work, this sort of natural pre-colonization habitat isn't always the most appropriate choice. And my entire research career, I've been focused in cities. So first in Chicago. For my postdoc, I was working in Chicago, St. Louis, and Detroit, and now based at UM-Flint. And it may be a surprise with Chicago in that list, but all of those are actually shrinking cities. So cities that are depopulating at a certain rate. Many of them have quite a bit of green space. And this look, although it looks great in a nature preserve, is not the desired look that the community is going for in a lot of neighborhoods, because just letting plants come up as they will can tend to look kind of weedy. It can look uncared for, and it can look like nobody is paying any attention to it. So perceptions of safety as well. So I'd like to highlight a couple studies that I am currently working on, that I've been working on as faculty. The first is the Porch Project. And I saw so many mirrors in Paul's lightning talk. I would love to speak with you more about alleys. In this case, you can see in this picture here on the left, I'd like to introduce my community partner, Megan Haza, She's a resident on the east side of Flint, a neighborhood that has a significant proportion of vacancy. And after Megan redid her front porch and sort of removed some big overhanging shrubs in front, she realized she was talking to her neighbors more because she was using her front yard more. And it was her goal to activate more front yards in her neighborhood so people could, she calls it increasing neighborliness are her goals and neighborhood connectivity. And we met to talk about a totally different project. And she mentioned this, and I asked if she had any funding for plants, and plants can be really expensive, and maybe some marigolds or something if there's leftover money in the budget. And I asked if I could apply for a grant to do some plant work. So the plant part of the porch project was born, and we planted, people could choose either a native plant garden in their front yard or non-native plant gardens. So things like roses and hostas, kind of typical front yard, formal landscaping look. And we planted them. We go back and visit once a month and do pollinator observations with my students. A lot of times the kids and families want to come out and help, and we spend a very long time, even though the observations are not very long. Sometimes we're there for hours, and it's also helping with, in general, just engagement with the community overall. And it's good for the bees too. You maybe can't see, but there are literally bees visiting the flowers as we are planting them. So that's been a fantastic project. We were on hold for field season with COVID, and it's just sort of continuing to grow as it grow, pun intended, maybe, as the neighborhood community shifts as to what people are looking for. And next, a new launch of a project that I've begun with collaborators in Chicago who are just people I've known for quite a long time. This is also with a very different hat on. Heather Dawson, our sort of MC for the day, where she and I were both internal analysis team co-leads for the biosequestration group for the President's Commission for Carbon Neutrality. And so we were looking at all of the land holdings that were owned by the University of Michigan. And one of the big things we noted was that a lot of our emissions on our campuses are due to mowing frequency. And if we could mow less, we could reduce our emissions. Working with a group of collaborators, we have a seed and restoration expert, a soils expert, and all of this artwork is done by a colleague. Her name is Liz Anna Kozik, and her background is in art. And she focuses on science communication. We have a couple of these, we've designed lawn alternatives. So purposefully things that are low growing, that you don't need to frequently mow. And half of these treatments, as I mentioned, my bees, half of these treatments support our native pollinators. So we have one field season under our belts, and we've had some really great luck getting foundation grants in Chicago. That's where the current sites are. And the next phase is installing a replicate on campus at UM-Flint. I'm putting in funding for that as we speak, and in partnership with our grounds team as well. So I'm kind of open to talking about any and all of that. I would love to talk with people at Dearborn about if there's any interest at all in any aspect of it. And yeah, I think that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think there's going to be a lot of talk during our breakout room, which I'm excited I get to be in a breakout room with you and some other people in sort of environmental, thinking about sort of environmental sustainability. And, you know, I don't think you mentioned that you just got a $300,000 grant with your collaborators, right? Today, just found out. So
Just found out today. So
Yes.
it's totally fundable. We can do this.
This is great news. Yeah, great news.
Let's do it in Michigan.
That's right. Do it at UM-Flint, do it at UM-Dearborn, right? Yeah, there's possibilities. Okay, I'll introduce our next speaker, Claudia Walters. She is a collegiate lecturer, assistant research scientist, and lecturer in geography, director of Environmental Interpretive Center at the University of Michigan Dearborn. Claudia.
Thank you. So my presentation is slightly different because I am not going to talk so much about my research. I'm going to talk about things that have happened at the EIC, as we call it. Here we're in an urban area, a natural area, used to be Henry Ford's backyard. We're bordered by the Rouge River, and we have a variety of habitats. And I would love to talk to Rebecca more about some of those restoration things because we have some similar things going on our campus here. So some of the things that we've done is we're looking at the impact of deer. We have an overabundance of deer. We have some deer exposures, so we're actually able to look at the impact of the deer specifically on what's happening on the regeneration of wooded areas. We also have converted an area that used to be Clara Ford's rose garden into tall grass prairie. And so we're doing periodic prescribed burns. And one of our staff members was just out, we did one this last spring, was just out mapping what is coming up after those prescribed burns. We also are looking to restore our rain gardens. You were talking about the aesthetic aspect. We have a couple of rain gardens about up to 15 years old, and several plants have taken over. And of course, we would like to make the rain gardens as appealing as possible to as broad a population as possible. And so right now we're mapping what's left over, and we're trying to re-diversify. We also have had some staff doing outreach on pollination. So we have a pollination partnership where insect hotels are handed out to the community, and they can log observations. Unfortunately, with COVID, we had to put things on hold. We're only able to interact with the campus community rather than the wider community. We're hoping to start up again. Another staff member was involved in a school gardens project, again, trying to promote healthy living and healthy diets, etc. So again, doing more of this community outreach as well. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in is using GIS and geospatial technologies. We were able to work with a student group and an outside expert to use UAVs to actually monitor or map a aquatic invasive, the Eurasian water milfoil. And we have an area that has a lot of different habitats in the environmental study area here. And so particularly the monitoring of invasives right next to the Rouge River, et cetera, is one of the areas that I would personally be very interested in as well. We also have a groundwater monitoring well system that we're in the process of expanding. So again, so we're able to look at how does the campus drain into the Rouge River, for instance. We've had several heavy rain events causing quite substantial damage on our campus. And so again, these are some of the areas that some of our staff is pursuing. We have a new member who is actually, he was teaching in the building earlier this morning. He is interested in investigating non-circulating hydroponics because there you can grow plants with decreased water usage. And he's also interested in agriculture more broadly, looking at soil health, utilizing cover crops, etc. And also one of his interests is in looking at DNA sequencing. And what you see here is a jar of honey that is actually produced at the EIC. And he is interested in identifying microbes, identifying species, et cetera, that contributed to that honey. And finally, the one thing I would be interested in is as we're embarking on the sustainability initiatives on campus, it would be very interesting to try to understand how we can actually change the mindset on our campus as far as sustainability activities, et cetera, are concerned. These were some discussions we had in a recent committee meeting on sustainability. And I think there's a lot that we don't know about how to effectively go about that. And I look forward to talking to people in the breakout.
Thank you, Claudia. Yeah, there are people here, lightning speakers and those in the audience that are part of the sustainability committee at UM-Flint, right? And thinking about what things we want to move forward there, and like visible efforts like the work that Rebecca plans on doing with the lawn alternatives. And when Rebecca mentioned biosequestration, I think that study area you mentioned was where we've got the canopy cover from UM-Dearborn. We had an idea of, we wanted to get an idea of what trees were available on each campus and what kind of canopy cover was available. And so thinking about the natural lands of the different campuses. So I know that I'll be in a breakout room with you, and I think Rebecca as well. And so there's more to talk about for sure. Okay, thank you very much. I want to introduce our last but not least lightning speaker is Greg Robarczyk. He is an associate professor of geography at the University of Michigan-Flint. Greg?
Great, thanks. Thanks, everyone. Second. Hi, this is great. I'm so excited about this presentation. I've been looking forward to this all week. So as Heather said, my name is Greg Robarczyk, Associate Professor of Geography at UM-Flint. I've been at Flint since 2010. My focus is on GIS technology as well as transportation planning. And what I want to talk about today is sort of new ideas, new project ideas I've been sort of putting on the back burner as of late that I want to bring to everyone's attention and hopefully find some collaborators indeed. So this will be a different flavor of Fred's talk. His talk was super interesting. I can't wait to talk to him more about research. But I have some ideas regarding smart cities, new ways of getting around and what that means for how we live or in terms of quality of life. So what we know so far is that in a transportation system, we have various modes to get around. Ideally, we want to reach any place we want to within 30 minutes. So this idea of a 30-minute city has been in the transportation planning literature for quite some time now. It entails the use of cycling, walking, mass transit, obviously the car as a main mode of transportation. And so the idea is to really be able to reach our destination within 30 minutes. 30 minutes is really the the friction cost, the time cost, and most of us are willing to deal with in terms of reaching our destination. Although in Michigan, since moving to Michigan in 2010, I think the cost is 1 hour, 60 minutes. It seems like everyone drives 60 minutes to get to their destination in Michigan. So smart cities, I think all of us have heard various things about smart cities. Has obviously changed the way we work. We're experiencing that right now in our current jobs with at UM-Dearborn, UM-Flint. So it's changing how we work, how we play, how we shop. And I'm mainly interested in travel. How does a smart city affecting us now in terms of travel as well as in the future? So many of us may not realize, but in terms of new travel modes, we have shared mobility. So 20% of 18 to 49-year-olds are using Uber and Lyft and other ride-hailing apps to get to our destination. There's over 100 different bike share systems in the United States. As of 2019, there's been 38 million e-scooter trips and e-bikes. And it pains me to say this in Michigan, e-bikes are now outselling automobiles. So like it or not, these different modes of transportation, these micromobilities are coming to major cities throughout the world, for better or worse. And so as a transportation geographer, I'm interested in how that affects us on multiple levels and how do we measure that and make sense of how this is going to change our lives. So some of the new technologies that pertain to smart cities that I'm interested in include mobility as a service, which is basically using apps to have a car service pick us up, using apps to undock a bicycle in a major city, using apps to use an e-scooter. E-micromobilities are, again, inundating every major city throughout the world. They're an easy way to have fun. I've used one in Detroit. They are quite fun. And so that fun factor is one aspect of e-scooters and other micromobilities. But the other thing is safety and how that is changing more or less the first and last mile of the travel trip. Again, teleworking, all of us are mostly working from home these days. So how does that change our shopping behavior when we're driving, the purpose of our trips, shared mobility, shared e-scooters, as well as people buying their own e-scooters and e-bikes to get around. The e-bike industry is taking off in leaps and bounds. As an avid mountain biker, e-mountain bikes are now blazing the trails throughout Michigan. So again, this technology is just so amazing, and it really reduces the cost of travel. And so again, that's going to change how we live, especially in urban areas. Some of the big sky research questions I have that hopefully I'll find some help with include, how will we assess human behaviors when the friction of travel changes? So again, all of us are traveling. We can't talk about equity or quality of life without talking about transportation. So when that friction factor, that time, the cost of travel is reduced, what does that mean for our human behaviors? What does that mean for how we get around and interact with other people and the environment? Travel happiness. I've been studying travel happiness for a couple on a couple previous research projects. So people not only travel for utilitarian purposes, but also for fun. So there's a lot of research that has looked at walking and cycling and e-scooters, making us feel happy. There's a happiness effect when we're using these active transportation modes. So in terms of a smart city and these different electronic micromobilities, what does that mean for travel happiness? Will it have a positive effect on environmental health? Will it have a negative effect? So these are really unanswered questions that I'm interested in, as well as federal government agencies like NSF. And so this idea of a 30-minute city is now being transformed into achieving a 15-minute city. So in other words, getting to where we need to go using different modes of transportation, using faster modes, using modes of transportation that are fun. And what does that mean in terms of us achieving a goal of a 15-minute city, and ideally without driving? So we all know the ill effects of the automobile, but if we can substitute those trips with other trips that are fun, efficient, sustainable, will that increase our quality of life? Will that increase social equity? These are the questions I'm hoping to find answers to, hopefully with collaborators from Dearborn and UM-Flint. So thanks for the time. I really appreciate this event. And if anyone has any questions, I'm looking forward to the breakout rooms. Please email me, or I'm on Twitter as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you very much. Yeah, I know Greg was very excited about this event too, as well as a lot of us are. So I know everybody's kind of excited to talk to one another. I just want to make sure those folks that have, where your work may cut across multiple disciplines, I heard a lot of talk about environmental health, for example. Health and engineering is our next event, right, on February 18th. And then we have, of course, some other events focused on educational innovation, AI and computer science, and then another one on social justice and community engagement. So I heard a lot about community engagement here too. Essentially, we're gonna put you into breakout rooms based on your contact cards. And so we thought faculty could discuss how their work might dovetail with some of the work that was presented, or just simply talk to one another and find out what each other does.